Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Joe Moore here, coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, we have Ayize Jama-Everett, who is one of the creators of a recent documentary. I just got to see it last night at a screening in Denver. The screening was on February 8, 2024, and it was awesome. The film is a very important and very timely piece talking about Black-specific perspectives and experiences in the psychedelic space and literally creating a table of their own. And I love it. It was compelling. It had really great nuance and was full of heart and soul, and it was amazing. It's going to be streaming online for a couple days, so check out their website and you can tune in. There's also a screening coming up in Detroit on February 24th, Los Angeles on February 28th, and Boston on March 27th. There might be some more dates coming, so stay tuned. Yeah, I really appreciated it. The panel at the end was also stellar. So if you can make it out to a screening, do so, please. And yeah, go check out the film. Tell your friends about it after you see it. Very special film. And I'm probably going to be talking about it for the next couple of years. So, all right. I think that's it for the front end. See y'all later. Have a great time listening, and we'll see you on the other side. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Psychedelics Today. Joe Moore here, joined by Ayize Jama-Everett. How are you today?
I am having an excellent time in this snuff house that you have invited me to. You're in San Francisco.
Market Street in Van Ness.
And just like nobody else in the entire building in downtown San Francisco, I swear, if I don't get out alive, Joe Moore killed me. That's what I'm telling you right now.
It's on the SD card, so okay. You should be good.
All right. I've seen those like horror movies where they just have like the found footage. It's going to be like the found audio tape podcast of like Ayize's last appearance.
I've just been listening to this super tangential. This Lovecraft Investigations audio podcast series from the BBC.
Oh,
and it
fun.
was like three different like super spooky like serial style podcast investigations. Yeah. It's dope.
Nice. But it's like all Lovecrafty.
They're pulling like Lovecraft stories, making them now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Lovecraft. Yeah. I don't,
Was it like supernatural horror from the 20s or something like that?
Yeah. Just unstable, like, writer one. And then, and racist. But I find, like, racist horror to be so funny. Like, he has this one story. It's so funny where this white guy basically, like, I can't remember the full thing, but basically the big horror reveal is that he had sex with a white ape, and the white ape had a child that came out of the house, and everybody thought it was like a Lord to the Manor Born, but it's like this total metaphor about race, and you're just like, wow, Lovecraft, wow. Like, are you okay? Did you need a hug?
Probably did.
Yeah, and some, DEI training.
Oh my God, yeah. But, he's a man of his time. A horrible time.
But he was like worse because like even people of his time were like, dude, you're kind of racist.
I'm glad he was getting called out. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like some of his friends were like, so maybe not.
Let's tone that down a little bit.
But all that being said, I still like In the Mouth of Madness and all that kind of stuff. I freaking love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting to have such a strong cult following on stuff like that, where it's like, I think he was just having like weird archetypal flooding in his dreams. And he's like, I need to get this out.
Yep.
And that was his outlet.
And that like primal, when I describe him, I'm like, if you can imagine the like unrestrained love of God, right? Then like the polar opposite of that being this like unrestrained terror about everything around you. Like that is what Lovecraft is great at writing. Kind of like a bad trip.
Right. It's like a proto Philip K. Dick in that there's like something out there is going to get you.
Right.
You just have no idea what it is.
Or it's that out there will get you. Right. There's no something out there. It is that out there does not like you. And you're just like, oh, great. How do you get away from that? Like you don't. You just,
I love that we got to start with Lovecraft.
Woo!
So let's talk. Like you're a fascinating character. We've known each other for a bunch of years now. You came on with the whole crew. What was it? Courtney Watson, Kufi
Kufi
Curry, and who else was there? Maybe
Letitia Brown.
Letitia was there. That's right.
Yeah. Or for a table of our own when we were like, I don't think we'd shot yet. Maybe we'd shot.
It was pre-fundraise.
Yeah.
Pre-fundraise, pre-shooting.
Yeah. And then we shot the doc and edited the doc and showed it at, the MAPS conference. And we've been touring it around. We're going to be touring around in February in Detroit and Denver and LA. March, we're going to do Boston, probably New York. We won an award at a Big Apple Film Festival.
Oh, dope.
Yeah, so it's been cool. I really love the doc. I love our crew. I love the people in it. And I think I'm about to crawl back underground after this, I think.
That's what you claimed years ago.
Yeah, I just, this above ground shit is, I can swear on here, right? Okay. This above ground shit is by and large for the birds. I'm not seeing a lot of the ethics and the moral. It's funny, if there's so many people now doing psychedelics and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I would assume, given the promises, that there would be more, ethical people out there. There'd be more people with less ego. There'd be more women in charge. There'd be more queer people in charge. There'd be more, people of color in charge. But it just seems like the same, white corporate dudes just talk. It's like they're talking about an app, they're like, oh, this is this new app. It's called MDMA and it can make you more productive and I'm like, no. It's like, well, this new app called mushrooms, it'll make you see things that you've never seen before and you can help boost your productivity. I'm like, that's not why I do this. That's not what this is about. This is very confusing. I want to go home. I want to I want to just be of service to the people that need it and not deal with the rest of this bullshit.
So you, I think let's rewind the tape for folks.
Sure.
Let's kind of talk about you and then we can get into the film once we get there.
Yeah.
You've had a long, interesting past.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you like to talk about your origin story?
I don't. But if I have to start, I'll say it starts with my mom, as I was growing up, she was working at Harlem Hospital, ambulatory detox unit. So, knew the addicts in Harlem as Harlem was transitioning from heroin to crack. I talk about my dad, who I didn't meet till later, but his name is Mutulu Shakur. He died last year. Famous for two things. One, raising Tupac. And two, bringing acupuncture to the South Bronx and Harlem in a community acupuncture setting to help deal with heroin addiction with guys coming back from Vietnam and from prison. So I was born and raised in and around substance use. And I say substance use, not necessarily substance abuse, because folks, my uncle one time was like, I don't care if you're out there drinking or smoking, but if I see you out there, doing coke, you're going to get in trouble, right? So there was levels to the game. Do you know what I mean? Or I remember this one heroin fiend around my block. Heroin's just hit different. And so but we were looking at this dude was on crack, running down the block, trying to bust into everybody's window. And this dude looks at me and he goes, man, these crackheads are crazy. And this is a dude who is the local heroin dope fiend. So I just understood levels to the game and use. And it's New York in the 80s. What are you gonna do? But yeah, I came out of that and went to boarding school in New Hampshire. Went to Morocco, hung out with the Ganawa. Saw a different way in which medicine can be used or sacred plants are used.
Did you know about the stories before that? Was there kind of talk about it?
No, because all my friends, they were so not Arab, but they're like, no, we're Arab. I'm like, bruh, you're 2 shades lighter than me. I'm pretty dark. I'm like, you're not freaking Arab. And they're like, no, we're Arab. And the Ganawa, they came from sub-Saharan Africa. They were brought up to, North Africa around the same time, the slave trade was happening in the U.S. So the Ganawa see me, they're like, oh, you're Ganawa. I was like, no, I'm not. And they're like, yeah, you are. And I was like, ah. But then to hang out with them and to see marijuana, keef, weed as just the oil for the food, the oil for your hair, as a spice, as a seasoning, as an incense, as a, like everything, you know, and like combined with their music and their like ritual, like singing that like, you know, sort of invokes these trance states, which were similar to the trance states I'd seen in Santeria and like Yoruba and like Candomblé and all these other African diasporic traditions in Harlem, right? I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we are all connected. Like there is something about like this out of body.
So you were noticing
experience.
that back in New York when you were younger?
I didn't notice it in New York, but when I hit Morocco and I saw the similarities to stuff in New York, I was like, oh, this is fascinating,
Right.
you know? So when I came back to the States, I was like, okay, like I wanted to study religion, and then went to seminary, you know, got a master's in divinity under, you know, my mentor, who was like this rogue Russian Orthodox priest. He was like a black queer rogue Orthodox priest.
Whoa.
Yeah. 6'2", multiply pierced, long blonde dreads, saved my life. Like,
Out here?
yeah, Ibrahim Farajaje. Like he was my homie. Like I lived with him. He was my professor. He was my mentor. Like freaking ruined me for all other teachers. You know, like I say, like he was. I didn't realize he was my mentor until he passed, because he just treated me as like family and he treated me as friend. And I was like, fuck, that's what that was. So yeah, you know, studied under him. And then it's like, you know, what do you do with the master's in divinity from a Unitarian Universalist seminary if you're not going to be a Unitarian Universalist minister? So I was like, I need to get something that'll like actually pay me. And so I got a master's in clinical psychology. And it's actually, okay, so while I was there, I was at New College of California, and I was like going to the Jungian Institute. I was going to like the Psychoanalytic Institute of San Francisco. I was like getting all these hours and like trying to figure this stuff out. I previously had worked at a drug and alcohol rehab for teenagers. And one of my former clients came to me. He's an 18-year-old white dude. His girlfriend, who had been 17, just died, 16 or 17, had just died of an overdose. And he had a 2-year-old kid. And he was like, I can't stop drinking. And I was like, okay, is there any time when you like don't want to drink? And he's like, yeah, when I do mushrooms. He's like, yeah, when I do mushrooms, I don't want to drink for like a month. And I was like, okay. So we sat down, and once a month, he would do like 5 grams of mushrooms. And because like I'd had him an inpatient, I'd had him an outpatient, like I knew him, I knew his story. We got to go like super, super deep, right? And after 5 months, he's like, yo, dude, do we have to keep doing this? I was like, no, this is your idea. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah. He's like, I joined this men's group, and it's like men with kids, and we're just like vibing, and that feels good. And like, you know, we do like outdoor stuff with my daughter, and like that feels good. And I'm thinking about going back to school, and I'm like studying. I got stuff to do. I was like, well, are you still drinking? He's like, well, I'm a mechanic, so like I have to like go out with the guys. He's like, he's like, it'll be a beer. I'll drink like half the beer. He's like, I just don't want to finish it. And I was like, look, man, mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned. But like, if you want, I can always sit for you. Like, you just call me up. And he's like, no, wait. He's like, remember that men's group? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, I've been telling them about what we've been doing, and they want to do it too. And I was like, okay, well, I got to check in with folks. And, you know, but like, that's how 2003, that's how I started doing this work.
Wild.
You know, I was just like, and then it just grew naturally. It was like, hey, you know, my dude just got out of prison and he's feeling fucked up. Would you mind doing a journey with him? I'm like, cool. It's like, hey, you know, my auntie, she's dying, and like, you know, she's feeling really scared. I think this might help. I'm like, yeah. So I was, you know, from 2003, you know, I had a few breaks, but from 2003 to like 2016, 2017, I was like, working with everybody. You know, I was working with Oakland. I was working with the East Bay, right? I go to UC Riverside to get a master's in creative writing, which is weird. I don't know why I did that, but long story. And then I come back, and then like, you know, this is after Decrim passes. So all of a sudden there's all these like psychedelic this and San Francisco psychedelic blah, and like the Oakland psychedelic. And I was like, all right, well, shit, cool. Like it's all, let's go. Let's see it. And it was like all white people. And I was just like, wait a minute. I mean, like, I've been doing this shit since 2003. And like, I've worked with like Filipinos, like Vietnamese, Hmong.
Hmong.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Like Venezuela, like fucking everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
what? So I was like, so what is this? Like, what is all this shit? And I was like confused, but I was like trying to give it a shot. So I'm like, all right, if I'm gonna come above ground, you know, like I have my own training, I have my own experience, I have my own stuff, but let me try and do the thing that like everybody like says that like is going on. So somebody introduced me to Francoise and Aharon.
Nice.
Not nice. And I go into their training and I'm like, this is some bullshit. Like, you know, I walked in, you know, like you're introducing at the beginning and I'm like, yeah, I'm a Black guy. I like being a Black guy. I really want to figure out how this works for Black guys. And it was like I shit in the punch bowl or something. I was like, what did I say? Like, why is everybody so weird? And then it just like
What year do you think that was roughly?
Oh, that was like right before, so what was that,
Right before shit went down for them?
It was like the year before shit went down for them.
Yeah. I think I probably know some people you were in school with there.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I was trying to talk everybody out of it.
Well, you didn't know.
Nobody bought.
We didn't know. I didn't know you at that time. I would have listened. But like, I was trying and I was just like it was funny. I remember because they had this whole protocol for MDMA, which is like you're not supposed to have sex for a week before or masturbate for a week before you do an MDMA journey.
Super scientific.
Which is, I'm like, okay. But I was like, so what do you do with the sexual energy? And they're like, well, it's never okay to have sex with a client. I'm like, I know that. I have a master's in clinical psychology. I'm working.
Like, they didn't know that yet.
Right. You know? I'm like, later, I'm like, But I was like, I'm saying like, you know, you're in like, you know, as I experience this substance like used recreationally, it's used generally to enhance sexual feelings. So like, if you've told somebody they can't masturbate for a week and then you give them something that's going to make them want to masturbate, what are you going to do in this room where there's this like power differential and like people are feeling sensual? It's never okay to have sex with the client. I was like, bruh, you have to give people more than that. And I'll just say this because I don't care. One of the things I think Francoise and Aharon did really well was they capitalized on immigrants to the U.S., like middle-class, wealthy immigrants to the U.S. And they like had this guy, this Brazilian dude in there. He's like, I want to share a story with you if that is okay. I was like, yeah, sure, fine. He's like, you know, I was on medicine and my therapist was there and I said, I want to have sex with you. And he said, no, but I will hold you. And in that moment, I realized I did not want sex with him. It was I wanted my father to love me. And that is why. And I was like, what the fuck does that have to do with my question? Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's an anecdotal, cute piece of stuff of your work. But if you're training people, right, like you have to give people some sort of support, some sort of way of thinking about the shit. So based off of that, based off of the race stuff that they had, based off of like, it just felt the power differential that was just so funky there. I was like, fuck you guys, I'm out. Like, and I told them, I'm not carrying your lineage. I don't believe you're carrying your lineage. This feels wrong. This is wrong. I just can't do it. They were like, well, you got a scholarship and, you know, you didn't pay and, you know, we have to figure out how to get our money. And I was like, interesting. Fuck you. But one of the people that I met in there, this really cool guy, he was like, hey, man, he's like, you know, I kind of fuck with this place over in Oakland, Sacred Garden. You know, have you thought about like talking to them? And I was like, no, it isn't. Da-da. So I go over. That's where I met Kufi Kiri. But like, you know, Kufi Kiri is awesome. But my man was like quiet. And like he was dipping and leaving that spot just as I was coming in. And like now I know he would have been like, hey man, come with me. But like he didn't know me at the time. So he was just kind of like, good luck, buddy. And so I go in, I'm dealing with fucking Bob Otis, who's like a total fucking piece of work. And, you know, his issues around race like kept coming up. Or like, you know, we're talking about training folks to do the work and da-da-da. And like at one point he's like, you know, I think it's really important that we're all nice. No matter what, all guides need to be nice. You know, me and you were both from the East Coast, right? I'm like, I don't know about nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Like nice can happen.
Right. Like, I don't know what that means.
You
nice.
Get a vibrate to be nice.
Right. You know, like what is that? But then, you know, my friend who's in the documentary, Roz, she was like, no, look, dude, she's like, from the East Coast. I'm from Boston. You're from New York. We don't do nice. We do real. Like, we got to be real. Like, it's important that facilitators are real with people from the beginning. I was like, got you. I'm there. yay, bung. So after the meeting, I'm like, hey, Bob, good meeting, right? He's like, yeah, I saw you and Roz over there trauma bonding. I was like, what? Exactly. And again, I'm a fucking therapist, man. Like, I'm a fucking minister. I'm like, I'm trauma, like, that's an accusation. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, the fuck? But, kept it chill, but like couldn't sleep. I was like, this not make me feel good. So I called him first thing in the morning. I was like, dude, let's talk. He's like, yeah, what's going on? I was like, I don't understand the trauma bonding thing, man. Like, it was just me and Roz, like, vibing, and like, you can disagree with it, sure, but what's that about? And he starts crying. He's like, I'm just afraid you're gonna take all the black people and leave Sacred Garden. The fuck, am I the fucking black people whisperer? Like I have no control of, like, what is that? And it just like showed me just how limited like his thinking was around this work and black people and like who we are and like what we represent and what we do. So like left that, and like at that point I was like, okay, fuck this above ground shit, because these people are, sticking fingers at people's asses for years and like, trying to steal black people. I was like, I'm done. And then I did a like journey and I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do next? And like what the journey said was like, you have to do a documentary about black people in medicine. And I was like, I think you.
Okay.
No, I was like, no, I am not a documentarian, man. I'm a writer. Like, I'm a teacher. I'm a therapist. Like, I could do some spiritual work, but I'm not a documentarian. I'm like, mushrooms, you have fucked this up. Please get in the mushrooms. Like, you have to do a documentary about black people in plant medicine. I was like, I don't have money. I'm like, I know people that have made movies before. They all end up broke and sad and depressed. Like, and it's like, you have to do a documentary. And the traditions that I come from, if you hear a message 3 times and you reject it 3 times, you're just cursing yourself. So I was like, fuck, dark. So did the doc. And every time I was like, going broke or like couldn't figure something out or like needed something, like shit would just magically appear. So yeah. Was that enough? I feel like I blabbered for
this
a little
perfect
bit. Okay.
So like the concept, the name of the film, Table of Our Own.
Yeah.
And it was, from what I recall, like black specific.
Yeah.
And it was, how can we make our own space?
Yeah. I mean, I was and still do get great invitations, to great spots to talk about plant medicine, whatever, right? I am usually the only one, right? The only person, the only one chair. And so, there's a lot of, just imagine if you're like the only black guy at a restaurant, let's just say like you just walk in and you're the only white guy at a restaurant, right? Not necessarily bad, but you're like, this is something that I am noticing. Right? Like, I am fully aware that I am the only white guy at a restaurant, right? And then, so if like with the psychedelic spaces where all this stuff, like so much of this is about ancestors, so much of this is about trauma, so much of this is about community, right? Like all of these things that for me inherently like involve my blackness in some way, right? And having to like carry that load is like fine, but also like, is this the extent of what the psychedelic space can do? It can allow for one. So I was like, so what happens if we're not being invited to somebody else's table, but we have a table of our own? And like Kufi Carey, I think, was the one who coined it. And I was like, like as soon as we heard it, I'm like, yep, that's what it is. Table of our own. Table. I was calling it like Black Mushroom Gods or some weirdness like that before. But yeah, table of our own is just what it is. And it's the concept and the idea and thank God the execution worked. But it still like sticks with me, like as we're touring, there's people that are like, we want to have you come out and do like a private showing in like San Diego. And like, no disrespect to San Diego, but I was like, okay, and how many black people are going to be there? Right? Like, this isn't a documentary like made by black people for white people, right? Even though white people can come, please come to the documentary. White people, it's okay if you come. But like, again, it's like you're going to an all black, or you're going to a black focused event, right? So it's like, I was like, yeah, I'm like, cool. Like maybe when we have it available online or like, you guys can see it, but like when we show, like, we come, like, people from the documentary come, and we're there to, like, be engaged with the audience and to, like, see the people that are doing work locally and stuff. And we're trying to build network. We're trying to build community, you know? Like, I don't have a lot of money. I'm not rich, but, like, I'll go out of my pocket to get the film to a spot if it's a primarily Black audience and try and bring as many people as I can, as opposed to, like, if we know it's a predominantly white audience, I'm like, okay, well, this is how much it costs to do it. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's an asshole move, but I don't think so.
From what I understand, the film's really trying to empower and say, hey, like, we can do this.
Yeah.
And we don't need external support necessarily. And, like, it seems like a smart activist move, honestly. Like, how do we get communities engaged and going?
I think a lot of times people don't understand, like, activism that doesn't look like marches.
Accurate. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, this is my form of activism. It's like arts activism.
Yeah.
You know? But that being said, I mean, like, we've met some awesome folks, like the folks at, like, Blackadelics. I always want to call them Blackalicious, like Blackadelics in Denver.
Yeah.
Sovereign and those guys, like, they're freaking amazing. And they've been, like, super hyped to, like, get it out there. Detroit and Modu Bakwai and the Sumerian Institute. You know those guys. They've been, since, Kalindi, rest in peace. And, like, before, like, they've been absolutely amazing.
He's kind of in charge of Decrim now, right?
They're up there, yeah.
Yeah. Thank God.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, wow, people of color in charge of Decrim? Wow, how do...
God.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Decrim thing in general, I'm like, yeah, I feel like when Decrim isn't married with, like, all substance use, then I don't know what the hell we're talking about. Like, there's a really nice person I was talking to who was instrumental in getting the Decrim in San Francisco passed.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I hated to, like, ran his parade, but I was like, yeah, dude, but the same week, Newsom, like, shot down, like, safer injection sites across California. I don't know how many people have been arrested for psychedelics in San Francisco in the past 20 years. I don't know how many people have died from psychedelics in the past 10 years in San Francisco. But I know, like, across the state of California, people are dying from, like, not having safe injection sites, from not having clean needles, from not having Narcan, from not having all of those things. So, like, the psychedelic community has this, like, cute little way of, like, partnering with senators and local congressmen to, like, be like, yay, we're decrimmed, and the word is always the same. Well, we'll get to the other substances later. And I'm like, well,
I'm glad you even get that. I never get that. Like, fuck, what? Are you kidding? Like, there's so many more people dying and going to prison from everything else.
Right.
Like, orders of magnitude more.
Yeah. I'm like, is there, like,
But the drug war's cool. We're okay with these people rotting in prison.
Yeah, that's fine. But, like, is there, like, a special branch of the DEA that's like, we investigate psychedelics? Like, is there a Mulder for psychedelics and, like, the FBI?
Probably 2 of them in the basement.
Right. Like, I don't think so, but...
That's a funny poster. Like, what would their I Want to Believe poster? I have the I Want to Believe in my office in
Really?
every shot. And then I'm like, what would that one be? I don't want you to trip.
Yeah, exactly. We need you to be sober at all times.
Oh my God. But yeah, like, how do we bridge that gap? I'm sure you've thought about that. Like, you're similarly, I think, a fan of Carl Hart's work. I fucking love Dr. Carl Hart. Fuck yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that he's becoming slightly more psychedelic too.
I mean, it's funny. Like, is he?
That's my sense, but I don't know how far.
Yeah. I think when I interviewed him, I didn't get the sense that he was getting more psychedelic. I think he was maybe seeing where the political alignment might be useful. But I also, but I also think that, like, he has the same critiques. Like, the drug war is the big issue. Like, your psychedelics are cute, and, like, maybe if they're a way of cracking in that drug war bullshit, great. But, like, I think he's more about, like, how do we end the drug war writ large?
How do we help the most people with this same effort? And I think the narrative is something like, are we kind of wasting resources by going after psychedelics specifically when we could be trying to help so many more people with that same money?
I think the question is, who is the we that we're talking about?
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of the people that I've talked to in the psychedelic movement don't give a shit about. I mean, like, they don't give a shit. Like, I was at a party the other night, and I said a joke, and it's also true. I'm like, look, if I hit like 70 and I'm still alive, I'm smoking opium. Like, come get me. Like, if you have a problem with the 70-year-old black dude who's survived since fucking 1974 in the US smoking opium in his room, like by himself with some jazz on, go to fucking hell. Like, come arrest me then. Let's just deal with it, right? And it was all these people in the psychedelic space. It's all these people who were, fish lovers and Burning Man people and did it. And they were like, and it was like this nervous laughter and wandering away. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, honestly and truly, like you have this level of drama. You can't even take a joke, semi-joke, about opium, but you're going to sit here talking about taking all these novel psychedelics that, like, you have no idea what they'll do to your brain. You have no idea what the long-term implications are.
Opium's so fucking safe.
You know what I mean? I'm like...
They need to take a fucking breath.
I'm not even talking about heroin, I'm talking about opium. I'm like, come on, what are you doing? But, it's like we've got all these biases that, my drug is better than your drug, and I'm like, I believe that from before what we consider civilization, which is communities that have writing, before that, there is a history of collective substance use, generally in connection with accessing the divine. I am not here to tell people how to access the divine. I am not here to tell people how to alter their consciousness. I want people to be safe about it because I think that there should be more people in the world and I don't want people hurt. But like, all this other stuff, like, no. So, and it's weird because then when you actually start having real conversations about substance use, the conversations you have change. So I have a friend who was like, I really want to try cocaine. I've never tried cocaine before. And I was like, I actually wouldn't recommend cocaine in the US. And she was like, why? Like, she was like, you're Mr. Drug Man. Like, and I was like, because most of the cocaine in the US is not cocaine.
Yeah, it's a pretty horrible supply problem.
Yeah, like we don't have like safe, like, supply chains of like, of these substances because they are illegal. And as a result, we're like, okay, if they're illegal, it doesn't matter if people do them. It doesn't matter if people die if they do them. Not my approach, but that's the FDA's approach, right? Like that's the DEA's approach, right? So I'm like, we're not thinking clearly about our substance use as a society. And especially when it comes to Black people, it's like, it's so funny. I had a friend, educated individual, okay? Like very smart individual, educator, works for a notable arts place in San Francisco. I told him I was like working in psychedelics and he was like, yeah, I don't smoke crack. And I was like, what?
I suppose the right dose crack could be psychedelic,
right?
but
And like cocaine-induced psychosis, okay, maybe. But he's like, I don't smoke crack, right? And this was like 3 years ago.
That's so weird.
Last year, he's like, no, I did my first journey. And I have to say, I'm gonna claim, maybe it's not true, but I'm gonna claim that some of it has to do with like our conversations, right? But also it's like the way in which we're able to talk about, some Black communities are able to talk about psychedelics, right? In this way that's like, again, connecting with the ancestors, connecting with trauma, bridging with larger community, right? Then it's like, okay. Part of like my internal motivations one day is to like psychically rescue all of the Black people that we threw away for being crackheads.
It's so many people.
Yeah.
It's so many people.
It's our aunties, it's our uncles, it's our mothers, it's our fathers, it's our brothers, it's our cousins, it's all these people that we allowed to just get thrown away because of their substance use. I'm not saying there wasn't problematic behavior. Of course there was. But like, we didn't even try. We were like, drunk uncles were kicking, nephews out because they smoked crack. I'm like, is there any way that we can have a conversation about this and realize that like we're all medicating because we're dealing with a pretty insane society? Like we use what we have around us.
So I have this colleague, and this person is only interested in largely plant psychedelics. Those are the only good drugs for anybody. Kind of notable person in the space. I had a conversation with a mutual friend of theirs, of ours, and medical person, but more on the team. And like the line she said was, it's not like helpful for us to judge people for what medicine, quote unquote, I hate we're using the term medicine, that they found that like help them get through shit.
Right.
Like, for instance, growing up in the streets, or like you come out of the war and you're all fucked up and you start drinking or whatever you're doing. Like, you just found the first thing that helps you get by day to day,
Yep.
because you live through some horrendous shit.
Yep.
And you got to deal somehow or another.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, and not everybody has money for fancy designer stuff or doctors, and maybe even doctors aren't going to help you. That's kind of what I'm seeing.
That's my thing, right? Like, as a therapist, like doing my training, I had to go back to like my parents' stuff, my aunt and uncles, friends Fanon, and like all these like, there's my favorite research book about psychology, about Black people in psychology, is called Even the Rat Was White. And it's a book on like medical, like psychological medical testing, and how it just did not pay attention to Black people at all. So like I stopped going to the Jungian Institute. They were like, can you tell us why? I was like, because I've been here for 6 months and you haven't mentioned the fact that I'm Black once. And they were like, that seems like it's important to you. I'm like, no, motherfucker. Don't you fucking Nuh-uh. I've done this enough. You should have known that. You should have talked about this, and you didn't. This is a while back. I'm sure they're different now. Or maybe. I hope. But like, we say like, people took the best thing that they could find, or the first thing they could find. Sometimes it's the only thing that they can find.
Yeah.
Like, what were the major services for Black GIs dealing with like PTSD coming back from Vietnam?
Fucking nothing was available, man. Like, you had some heroin, you probably had cannabis, but does like cannabis help a little bit, maybe, but not a ton.
But,
Yeah.
So folks are doing like what's available to them, and it's funny. For me, I feel like an effective use of plant medicine is that your use actually decreases. Right? Like, I don't understand these peak hoppers that are like, well, ayahuasca was cool, but now I gotta go to Gabon to, to do some iboga. And then after that, I heard about this novel thing in South Africa. I'm gonna go down there. I'm like, what are you running from, homie? Like, what happened to you? Like, chill out. Like, it's okay. Like, when I was editing the doc.
Are you going to be accepted by your community if you don't do the next scary thing?
If you don't do the next big thing, right? And I'm like, but
who gives a shit?
Is that your community? Like, do they really care about you? Do they really give a fuck about you? Like, when I was editing the doc, and, we have this big room and everybody like is just in there talking, right? And so I'm in the editing process, right? So this has already happened, and I'm listening for like 6-7 hours of this talk, and I wasn't in the room the whole time because I was pulling people out to interview them one-on-one. And I'm like, well, they are talking about community, and they're talking about the youth, and they're talking about the elders, and they're talking about health, and they're talking about like capitalism, and they're talking about like acceptance, and they're talking about medical models. And I'm like, will somebody please say mushrooms? Will somebody please say MDMA? Will somebody please? And like, that was the hardest part about editing, because I had all of these people that had healed so much of their own shit through this work and other things, that they weren't talking about the substances. They were talking about what the substances allowed them to be able to do.
Fuck yeah.
And so for me, like when I'm looking at medicine communities, I'm like if you're like a psychedelic church and you're like, we're going to meet on Tuesdays and we're going to smoke DMT for 5 hours and then we're going to look at our navels and then we're going to like, I don't see the church in that. Right? Like that's not church to me. That's just getting high.
It'd be a really rigorous sermon, at least.
You might be able to from a fucking space chinchilla. You know what I mean? But like if you're like a community that's like, hey, look, we're going to do some medicine work on like Friday night, and then on Saturday morning, we're going to go feed the homeless and like clothe the naked and, shelter the home. All right, cool. I can mess with you, but like the psychedelic quote unquote community, man, it is just funky. Like it's not, I'm not in love with it. Like I was never like, I don't think I was ever going to be in love with it, but I thought like there would be a way of like, okay, this kind of works. I'll be okay to be underground. Like I think like after the doc and, like I'll still work with people, but like I don't need to be going to conferences and the whatnot. Like I don't see it as being very useful.
Right. Like we chatted the other day a little bit about access.
Yeah.
And like, that's, everybody's kind of like preaching, oh, access, like that's how we're going to get to communities and we're going to have insurance reimbursement and blah, 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 which is fine for some communities, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's I think you told Kyle a while ago this fun line. It's like, if you're being too inclusive, you're not really being inclusive at all.
Yeah.
And you're just a blank canvas that's doing kind of, I don't know,
like
serving
nothing.
up gruel.
Yeah.
Versus really specific, tailored stuff, right?
Targeted needs, like specific, rich folks talking about tailored medicine, right? Like individualized medicine.
Yeah.
Well, like, what about individual communities? Like, well, we'll just leave it on the community level, right? Like, what works? We're right next to the Tenderloin in San Francisco. Do you know that?
I hear it's spicy. I don't know much about it.
Oh, I'm not going to walk with you, but if you want to see one of the last open air drug markets in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
Right up there.
Mm-hmm. A couple of my friends walked through it last year, really high on acid at midnight.
Oh, brave souls.
They did fine. They didn't know what they were up to.
Yeah, they'll get through there, but brave souls. If you want to see somebody, shooting up in public, like you want to see some people shitting in public, you want to see people, like the whole nine is out there. What's going to work in the Tenderloin is not going to work 13 miles away in East Oakland.
Yeah.
Like where I live. Like it's not going to work, right? So when we talk about access, we're talking about like insurance. Dude, I barely have insurance.
Same.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what, like insurance reimbursement? Like, you want a revolution and you start with insurance reimbursement? What? How does that make any, like, was Martin Luther King marching across that bridge in Selma being like, we are going to have insurance reimbursement forever? No, that is not where you meet people. That is the last fucking thing. That is the blip at the end, right? People are dying. People are killing themselves. Like kids, like, I mean, I'm a black male. Black men are killing themselves at an alarming rate, dealing with depression like you would not believe. Some people who are seriously struggling give a fuck about insurance. And as, someone who's worked with those folks, I don't give a fuck about insurance necessarily. As long as I have enough to eat, I'm okay. And if someone's, in a decriminalized state or not, whatever, growing their own whatever, and they want people who are knowledgeable and kind and smart and caring around them and are willing to sit with them, just that alone. Take the mushrooms out of it. Take the psychedelics out of it. If you just have kind, willing, open-hearted, knowledgeable people willing to sit with you when you are in distress, that is healing.
Yeah.
Like Rick Doblin was sitting there for a while. He's not singing anymore, but he's like, we're going to need 1,500 new therapists. Sorry, that's my Rick Doblin voice. I shouldn't do that. He's like a nice
Kermit
guy.
the Frog.
I know. He's such a nice guy. I shouldn't do that. But Doblin's like, we're going to need like 1,500 new therapists for all the need that's out there. I am a black male therapist. I can tell you, a lot of black people don't go to therapy. We need 1,500 home health care workers. We need 1,500 nursing assistants. We need 1,500 bus drivers. We need people that are already in the community who are already doing work, trained on how to do this work. But when you follow this medical model, right, we're assuming that the medical model and the community model intercede each other at some point. And that's not necessarily true.
Like, I hope there's continual like feedback and cross
would be
fade.
Nice. It would be nice.
That's kind of where I'm sitting. Like, how do we democratize whatever they found that's helpful and give it to everybody else? It's like, you can't get more democratic than mushrooms.
Yep.
Well, maybe we can if we can GE some grass or something. But
yeah, that'd be nice.
But how do we do that? And I think what you're doing with the film gets people interested. They can peer support each other. And I started getting a little softer on religions lately.
Yay!
Like,
what did I do?
Oh, I wish it was you.
Damn.
But I'm like, you were there though.
Oh, really?
As part of that, the Christian psychedelic thing that we did.
Yeah.
I was like, there's some interesting fucking opportunities here. You guys have real estate. You have people trained in pastoral care.
Yep.
Which is almost probably better than a therapist in a lot of cases.
Yes.
For folks.
Again, having a master's in divinity and a master's in clinical psychology, I will tell you, if you want to talk about altered states of consciousness, and you can include grieving, you can include birth, you can include marriage in that, right? Mm-hmm. Who's got more training in that? Generally, the religious crew.
And not to mention like that togetherness in a service.
Yeah.
And like, I just finished a really interesting book on like, The Righteous Mind, I think it was called. And it was talking about this kind of like hive switch. So you're like humans being like 10% like
B.
primate and 10% B. And it's like through group activity like this, doing the same movements, like that's why people love the fucking Macarena. And like they sometimes love their services, like because they're getting up, clapping, moving. Similarly, they trust each other because they're doing the same shit.
Yeah.
And like that group togetherness is such an important function. It's not necessarily like helpful what the content might be or the after, but like the fact that you're together is it.
Right.
And you're doing the same shit and you feel part of something as opposed to I'm just a lone economic agent barely pulling my life together.
Well, that's a construction, right? Like from the nuclear family to the individual, right? These are all capitalist constructions, right? Based off of economies. You know, that mentor I was telling you about, Dr. Ibrahim Farajajeh, he lived in Turkey for a while. And at one point he was sick and I went out to see him and he took me to a Sufi zikr, like in the middle of Istanbul, that like started at like 10 p.m. and went to like 1. There is something out of body about having a massive amount of like, in this case, all men around you and everybody's just going, who, 100 times. Then la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, 100 times. It matters what the words are in the cultural context. But just that unified way of doing things resonated in a way that like you don't get by yourself, you know? Like, and then when you add the cultural context to it, right? Like who as like the unpronounceable name of God, right? Like that's what you're saying. Like, right? There's something like huge and mystic and important in that. So it doesn't surprise me that like psychedelics come from that. You know, plant medicine comes from those same roots. So that's why when people are like, yeah, you know, therapists are going to be the ones that are going to deliver this. I'm like, what do therapists know about this? Right? You're sitting here taking all of this stuff and you're putting it in the context of pathology.
Right.
Something has to be wrong in order for you to take this so that it can be corrected. Actually, maybe things are all right and this is a way of joining. But again, that goes against capitalist things because like in order for capitalism, you have to believe that there's something wrong with you and that's why you have to buy this, that, or the other thing instead of celebrating the fact of what is right. I don't know. Sorry. Just there'll be a meeting at the docks, you know, that I'm going to be leading. It's a spiritual, you know, Marxist. Sorry. Talking shit. Spiritual Marxist.
I like that. So how, all right. So we have these practices. There's lineages we can look back upon. We can like, where do I come from? And what did that look like in my origins? Yeah. You know, like I did a lot of study in school of like Hinduism, contemporary Christianity, like ancient Christianity. I'm like, that stuff's not super for me. Right. But what is for me? I don't know. So you have to like kind of quest that out and find out like what works for you as an individual. But what community do you want to vibe with and like works with you? And then Ben Sessa regularly, one of his funniest critiques for me, and he goes a little far with it sometimes, is like, why is it the same like stage design every psychedelic office you go into, the Buddha statues, some chakra posters, and like, you know, why are they using kind of like Eastern rhetoric, right? Yeah. Like, I can't remember if I told this story the last time I was on, but like I was gonna work with this Ethiopian woman, and she was like, "Hey, just one thing." I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "No pan flutes." I was like, "What?" She's like, "I've been in a bunch of medicine spaces. Every time I go, these freaking pan flutes, they just annoy me. It's something about the pitch. I just can't do it." I was like, "Well, it's your journey. So whatever you want, that's what we're going to do. So like, what do you want?" She's like, "I'm Ethiopian Orthodox. Our liturgy is song. I want to hear my people singing our stuff." I was like, "You got it." You know what I mean? Freaking amazing journey. Right? I always say like, I don't bring the turkey feather and the rattler because that's not my culture. But if that's your culture, bring the turkey feather and the rattlers and I'll support that. But the other side of it is like, if that's not your culture, if that doesn't do it for you, there's no script on this shit. Every culture around the world has had a plant medicine tradition and new cultures arrive
all the time. Look, I'm not a fucking Fish, Grateful Dead person. Surprise. But if that's your thing and that's what you need in order to feel comfortable and to be able to sink into yourself with this stuff, bring that to your journey, right? Like, why are we, it's that fake mysticism, you know? Have you met the millionaire shaman?
What?
Have you met this dude?
What?
This douchebag? Oh my God, I was going to smack the hell out of him. He's met this dude. He's like, yeah, I'm a millionaire shaman. I'm like, you have $1 million? He's like, well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure I do, but like, I only do my shamanic work for people who make $1 million or more a year. And I was like, okay, so many people want to murder you, but
That's
like
ridiculous.
talking to him, and he's like, well, I've worked with the Shipibo people, and I've been to Oaxaca, and I was just like, you are a culture vulture. I'm like, you have just appropriated other people's cultures, and you are. For like, I mean, this dude was charging, I think like 100,000 or something like that. No, wait a minute. But it was like maybe 25,000 for like 2-day long journeys with folks. And I was just like, but who are you? Where's your heart? Like, what do you care about? Like, what are you bringing to the table aside from trappings that you've taken from other cultures? You're an ass. You know, like to me, I was like, yeah, man, don't talk. He's like, yeah, we should work together. I was like, we will never work together. I need to be abundantly clear with you about this. Like, I don't give a shit how much money you make. I don't care how much you charge people. Like, you are not what I appreciate about this work.
Well, watch out for him, folks.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Don't trust a millionaire shaman. Okay, please don't.
Like when people are serving exclusively hyper wealthy folks, it's super strange to me.
Yeah.
I don't super understand it. So my tradition's super weird, right? Like twice occupied Soviet Prague, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Nazi Germany, Soviets. Groff still read Freud, even though he could probably go to prison for the rest of his life for reading Freud or something. Yep. And like, that's kind of my orientation, but we're flexible. Like we're like, yeah, it seemed to work for him. It seemed to work for him. And this is the model we like. And that said, there's plenty of traditions that work pretty well too. Like our whole jam is like, don't use words that people understand because it can like kind of capture their subconscious train or something.
Interesting.
We want to be able to project against something. And yeah, sometimes we'll throw in music that people are going to fucking hate, but it's like accordions or some shit.
Yeah,
like, feel that rage.
Yep, I feel that rage.
But it's like, you know, it's not programmatic. Like people have their own vibe on how they produce their stuff. And we're open too. Like I resisted the hell out of this. Like, you know, like Ram Dass East Forest thing. Yeah. When I was in Jamaica facilitating for one person, she was like demanding I put it on. And I was like, what? Like, please, no. But eventually I folded because she asked so many times. Well, yeah, you came all the way down here.
It's her journey, you know.
Yeah. And like I felt so conflicted, but it was also like, you know, at a certain point you kind of have to be flexible.
I mean, I think for clients, I'm like, it's their journey, you know? And like, the role that I take on, and everybody does different things, but like my role is like being of service, you know? And so it's like, if I can tolerate the Ram Dass or the chaos music and like, that's what somebody needs in the moment, you know, that's what I'll give. For me, don't do that to me. You know, like nah, I got enough. I know how to fight. Like when I'm journeying, like I know how to fight. I know how to struggle. The struggle for me is being able to relax. Right. So like for me, like you want me to just tolerate something like chaos music? Okay, I'll tolerate it. By the way, that's my Tuesday.
Right.
So what have you brought me? Do you know what I mean? But like, hey, Ayize, it's okay for you to chill. It's okay for you to relax right now. And like, here are all the cues that let you know that it's okay to go there. Ooh, somebody facilitates for me like that.
And I guess I should clarify too, this is more for holotropic breathwork type stuff versus psychedelic stuff. Right. And like, in my opinion, in the breathwork world, you do have to have some sort of catalyst to get us to a similar place as in like psychedelic sessions. But
something to work against.
Right. Like, yeah. And it like helps keep the container when, you know, your neighbor's screaming their face off and you're just like twiddling your thumbs. You're like, all right, I've got a little bit of a sonic cocoon here.
Right. This works for me.
Right. So all this critique of the psychedelic movement, like writ large, is super interesting to me. I don't think people get to hear it enough because there's a lot of like patting each other on the back.
There's a lot of selling.
A lot of selling too.
Yeah, like there's a, as soon as, well, I've already seen it, but like as soon as they start saying like, psychedelics can help you lose weight, that's when we're fucked. Because it's like the diet industry has grown like every year since like the 1950s, and Americans have just gotten fatter and fatter. So you can sell Americans whatever you want and call it diet, and you're fine.
Well, there's like a few categories, right? Of like, there's sex, there's money, and then there's looking good. Like those are the three kind of like permanent marketing pillars, and we're hitting all three of those.
Yep.
There's like sex and psychedelics talks all the time.
Oh God, we can talk about. No, I don't want to talk about this.
Like I'm fascinated in the sex and psychedelic stuff, but I also think like, guys, if we're going to be making progress on the drug war, is this the one that we want to raise right now?
Yeah.
Like because America is so afraid of sex generally that like, I think we should like kind of keep that a little secret and private for a little bit longer until we make some progress on the drug war largely.
But I think they also like, I don't understand how you're selling healthy sex when there's so much sexual misconduct going on in the psychedelic space. I'm like, who is checking on this? Like, how do you know this is good? Because if I am a government agent and I want to take some shit down, I'll do it very easily just by being like, okay, let's look for sexual misconduct in the psychedelic space. Bang, 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 bang. This shit is not safe. Bum. No, we're done. It's over. And like, but like nobody really addresses it like that. Like the sexual, I was on another podcast and somebody was like, well, do you think that people who like who have sexual misconduct in the psychedelic space are evil, or do you think they are just misguided? And I'm like, well, if you're being abused, does it fucking matter? Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if you're misguided. Like, you've crossed the line and you violated people's boundaries. Like, I just can't. I don't get that. But in this space, I've seen so much tolerance of sexual misconduct. Like it's like we're in Senate. It's like we're Congress. It's like here's another intern we got to deal with, and I'm like, God. Yeah, I don't understand. Like when I work with people now, like from the beginning, pretty much from the beginning, I've been like, look, there's all different types of journeys. People do all different types of stuff. There's some journeys that are totally open and receptive to sexual energy. That's not what I do. If you're feeling any sexual energy from me, that's my fault. And I need to stop that. I need you to let me know so that happens. And I'm going to maintain that boundary for you. I used to say that just to women. Now I say it to men, right? And I say it to everybody. And it's like, so many people will be like, that's the first time anyone has ever said that to me at all in a medicine space. And I was like, fuck, and that's how you get the like, let me massage your root chakra shit. Sorry.
There's still some people, it's a soft. Fuck. There's still some people I would love to call out, but
yeah.
Just keep it inside and let it fester for a few more years, everybody. Fuck. Yeah, like one of my friends had that, like rural kid from the South going to a big city for a session. Like that was the first thing the dude said.
Yeah.
I got to do this so I know if you're relaxed. I'm like, fuck yourself.
Well, they were trained in how to do it. They were trained how to have victims. Like there's a predatory element in the psychedelic space that where like they have trained people to be like part of being in a psychedelic space is to not have control over your body. And I'm like, fuck you.
Wow.
Like, well, why don't you let go? You have to release. You have to let go. You have to. It's like, if it's that hard for me to let go, one, like, maybe we should talk about that ahead of time. Two, is sticking your thumb up my ass really going to be the way? Is that what you think? Or you just want to stick your...
Yeah, right? Like,
you just
exactly.
Want to stick just say it. Like, almost, like, I just want them to be like, I really want to stick my finger up your ass. Nah, I'm not going to let you do that. Okay, cool. We can move on. Let's have coffee. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can just do that, but that's not how predators work.
Right.
Yeah.
They'd have to pay me enough. I don't know what that number is yet, but I don't know.
At least a cocktail.
Right. At least a cocktail. Yeah. Like it's so fucking weird and it's everywhere. And I don't super understand it. And these people are still allowed to be in the community even after they get busted. Like
intellectual peers in the community, like not freaking rogues, like freaking on panels and like at conferences. As I said, like I don't get this shit. I like in the underground, like where I come out of, like I've known people who've been run out of town. I've known people who've had their cars broken. I know people who've like had all this like shit happen to them because they violated boundaries. But above ground, you guys don't seem, not you, but like a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, they molested 15 people, but like, let's hold a circle so that we can talk about what we can do to repair the relationship. The fuck are you talking about? You out of your goddamn mind?
Yeah, I would love to have this conversation eventually with like the Denver scene, because they're, you know, very, it's mostly good, I guess. I don't know. I'm so conflicted. Like, I don't actually like being in psychedelic spaces too often.
Yeah.
And like, I don't, sorry, everybody, that you had to hear that from me. But like,
it was my fault. I even made him say it.
And I'm just like, there seems to be a lack of saying what they actually mean.
Yeah.
And there's like, kind of like social justice-y tap dancing around issues, as opposed to like, let's get directly to the point here. Like a fucking East Coast, right? Like I don't have time for that. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And like, I also just don't understand.
Okay, I'm going to give you hope for Denver.
Yeah, please.
Do you know Evan Segura?
Yeah.
So he just moved out there.
Great.
Love Evan. Super smart, super ethical, super moral, like super community rooted. Love that guy. Sovereign, Carolyn, Kenya from Psychedelics, like that crew in Denver that I've associated with, just super like high marks as far as I'm concerned in terms of like holding it down and having community standards that are real and like approachable, and like not a lot of confusion on what the fuck they're talking about. They mean what they say and they say what they mean. You know, I fuck with them.
Great.
Yeah.
I've only heard amazing things about Evan. We've communicated online. Sovereign's been on the show a few times, I think. And we've definitely met a few times too. Sweetheart, for sure.
Yeah.
We were at the funniest conference together this summer. It was by Students for Liberty.
Ooh.
Cato Institute was behind it. And then, so it was like student libertarian body.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was so compelling for me purely on their drug war platform. I'm like, oh, fuck, like where else am I going to see this?
Right.
And it's only in like libertarian circles. Like both parties are like, fucking lock them up. and these guys are like, let them all out. What are you guys doing?
Yeah. How much money we're wasting right now?
Yeah. And they actually had white papers from the Cato Institute on supervised injection sites and why we need them. And like for the Cato Institute to put that stuff out, like seems like it's an interesting thing for me to read.
It's going to be some strange bedfellows, right?
Dude.
Like to get this through, to like end the drug war, it's going to be some really interesting crew that are going to have to get together.
Yeah.
You know?
And like, you know, we need some sort of coalitions and alliances there. It's like, oh, because they don't share our, you know, hyper left politics, we can't work with them. It's like, no, guys, we need to work together on this crucial issue.
Yeah. You know, there was a guy who passed, another, I can't call him a mentor because I only met him 3 times, but like loved him.
Yeah.
Andrew Vax, VACHSS. He was a writer and lawyer, only worked for abused kids. And he said, if you were to have the same loyalty for ending child abuse as you do have loyalty for the NRA, child abuse would be over in the U.S. It's like NRA, Republican.
Like that simple? Really?
Yep. Republican, Democrat, whatever. Doesn't matter if you're a member of the NRA, you got that money, push that lobby through. They're a one issue freaking block. Right? I
guess it is a lot of fucking energy they take. I guess. Like I never really fully realized how much money they're sucking up.
I mean, they've lost a lot of it recently, but previously,
that guy ran off.
Yeah, like there was a lot of momentum there. If there is like a block that was just about ending the drug war, and this is why I feel like a lot of the psychedelic policymakers are fucking idiots. If you just end the drug war, fuck your decrim, fuck your legalization. We're just ending it all. Right? We're setting parameters for health. We're setting you can set parameters for transporting. You can like there can be some outward boundaries.
Yeah.
But we're ending the drug war and saving how much freaking money?
Billions a year.
You know what I mean? Like it's just,
and not to mention like let's get them back in the workforce and like back to their families, and then we have that much more healthy situations going on.
Yeah.
And it's thinking holistically is hard for folks,
especially politicians.
Yeah, like in your on the drug war thinking.
Yeah,
like Dr. Carl Hart saying, kind of end scheduling. generally.
Yes.
You're with that?
Yes.
I think the scheduling is not scientific whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen, have you ever had David Nutt on?
I think he's taught for Vital. I don't know that he's been on the podcast.
I mean,
I love David Nutt though.
He's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it was like 2000s. He did like, just in terms of like deaths caused in the UK, like which substances like ranked the highest, right?
Was that like harm scale in the Lancet?
Yep.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Right?
Yeah. I talk about it nonstop. It's like my primary argument.
So many people in the US think that the scheduling has to do with like causes of death or harm or anything. Not at all.
It was harm to self and others by drug.
Yep.
And like
that's what David Nutt did.
LSD, psilocybin, like buprenorphine were like the lowest.
Right.
And then alcohol was the highest. And
Yep.
it's like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, so when he came out, he's like, immediately, we need to decriminalize everything safer than alcohol.
Right.
And then we need to figure out the rest of it.
And then we can figure it out. And I think for a lot of folks, especially, maybe on the right or whatever, who are like, what are you guys talking about? They assume that it's like free for all. And I don't think that a free for all makes sense, right? Yes, we need to decrim all these drugs, right? But then like we do need to put in safety parameters for folks. And what do those safety parameters look like? Let's have people who have worked in the industry. Let's have people who are victims of substance use. Let's have people who are casual substance users.
Yeah.
Let's have all of them have a say in what those new policies look like. I would love to see that. Included psychedelics, fine, blah, 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 whatever. But this, like, if you actually have that conversation, the psychedelic conversation is going to be the last one on the last day in the smallest room, way in the back, and no one's going to give a shit whatever you decide.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm sorry.
For sure.
Like, it's not like we've got a rampant fucking, ketamine problem in the U.S. Like, we're okay. But we have a rampant fentanyl problem in the U.S.
Fuck yeah, we do.
We have some opioid issues we need to deal with, some alcoholism issues that we're dealing with, right? And then again, I think, maybe it's just my orientation, but the mental health components that go along with these, really, really important to address.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the psychedelic space, maybe the psychedelic space comes out of the closet for the mental health conversation, right? But so many people are going to psychedelics because of mental health issues that they can't get addressed through usual mental health services, right? If we're going to co-combine, if you think about the amount of people who are going to psychedelics who are also on ADHD meds, right? Like there's these like interesting crossovers that we're not talking about. We're not talking about women over the age of 50 and hormone changes and what substances they're using to just cope, right? Like we're not talking about aging in general on the body and how that relates to different substances. Like we're not doing the good work that we could be doing because we're so busy criminalizing.
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm working with this Egyptologist asked me about blue lotus, which is a plant that grows in Egypt. She found a papyrus that has an old recipe for blue lotus, and she was like, could you make this? And I was like, yeah, I think we actually could. That's the kind of stuff I'm really interested in when it comes to psychedelics. I'm really interested in what would it take. Is there a subtle psychedelic that can ease Alzheimer's distress, right? Is there some combo of something that can help deal with Parkinson's a little easier for folks, like perimenopausal or postpartum depression, right? What can we be doing to help things like that? Those things that have to do with regular living in the world and the day-to-day general suffering that we deal with. Can we think about how to work with those things? Or are we just going to be talking about this bullshit peak 5 fucking staring at our navel bullshit for the rest of our lives? Because I am not interested in that. That is so white boy boring to me. That is so corporate, tech bro shitty to me. It makes me want to take a shower when I go to psychedelic conferences, and that's the narrative that's going on. I just don't care about it. Maybe I'm just an asshole, but I don't know.
Hamilton Morris years ago was in response to some pushback from from like Carlos at Decrim Nature. And it was like, what a horrible problem to have billionaires just pouring all their money into psychedelic research that we can then use for our own purposes. Like, as if the criminalization will get worse or anything like that, even if they can get their shit through the FDA and prescribable. Like, drug war is about as bad as it's going to get, I think. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, there's no more resources for it.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
People don't really understand how like dire the financial situation the United States is in right now. It's not good, everybody.
Yeah, it's like we can, I mean, I'm not going to say it too loud, but like, I think it's okay to be experimenting with some stuff on our own in communities where you feel like you have a sense of safety and security and like you have some safety checks around what you're doing and like talking, like working in community. I think it's really important for folks to, what are our local cures?
Take it out of the shadows.
Yeah.
Start talking to each other. Be safe, though. There's cops out there still, guys.
Always be
safe.
You know, but like at least be having conversations with each other.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of guys that, you know, came out of Vietnam a lot of guys that came out of, you know, the military recently, like that's how they started working with psychedelics. They're like, hey man, this worked for me. Let this work for you. And then they go down to Texas and form a church. That's fine. Do you know what I mean? But like, that's how you get so many veterans, you know, doing this work together because they're like, this worked for me. And you're my brother.
Their bullshit alarm's pretty high, so they have to like go to their peers for like trust stuff, right?
That's how I feel about Black people in general. Like that's why, you know, you want access to Black people. Yeah, find Black people you can trust. And here's a clue: if the Black person you trust has no Black friends, you can't trust them. Do you know what I mean? Like in our community, like. Anybody, I don't get black, white, whatever. I'm like, do you know this guy? Do you know? I mean, you and Reggie, you know, like you asked me about Reggie. Reggie asked me about you. Bong, cool, good connect. Do you know what I mean? And like those networks are more important to me than the FDA.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like intellectually kind of saying the FDA is going to help these pockets of people. They're going to get helped kind of anyway. They're kind of already with resources to a degree. And the people without resources, like, it's got to be a peer-based mutual aid support deal, kind of.
Well, that's what the rich guys were doing, right? The ones who can afford the millionaire shaman, right? Like, they're like, hey, like, this guy worked for me, let him work for you, and da-da-da, right? Like, they can afford it. The awesome thing about plant medicine is that, like, these are plants, right? And who's closest to the dirt, right? Who's closest to the ground? Who's closest to the underground? Like, that crew, who, like... I think like especially like I know I just said like, you know, talk to your people, but like make sure at least one of your people like knows the land, like knows the substances, like knows the dirt, like knows what's growing, right? Like not just, oh, I tried this once and it was cool. Like, well, what is this shit made of? Who made it? How did they make it? You know, like all of those conversations I feel like are necessary for safety, but two, to really get the full benefits of this stuff.
This is one of the reasons why I'm not like super bullish on like me or people I know doing MDMA or LSD work with people. Like we know we can get really pure mushrooms for sure. We can grow them ourselves, but when it comes into the drugs, it's like, that's a really specialty category and it becomes a little more complicated.
Yeah.
Like I'm into that stuff. Like I love that shit. I'll take it recreationally for sure. Like for whatever my own ends are, but like to propose it as some sort of like medical deal, like no fucking way.
I'm always like, know your local drug dealer.
Right.
You know, it was funny. I had a conversation with Tony Bastos at one point and I was like, Tony, I'm sick of your studies. He's like, why? I'm like, all your studies are around psilocybin. I'm like, nobody I know can get access to psilocybin. People get access to mushrooms and there's an ensemble effect. There's MAOIs, there's, you know, originacine, you know, like there's all these different things in the mushroom. So like your studies, they don't mean that much to the average Joe. And he's like, what, you're saying we should do like replicate the same studies in mushroom? He's like, actually, that's a really good idea. I was like, see, Tony, we're friends. I like Tony Bastos. Tony Bastos is awesome. Another East Coast person. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, it's like, who are those people who have that level, right? Because all of these studies that are coming out, you know, and you know my rant. Like if you, especially for Black people, you look at these studies, how many Black people are in the studies?
It's like the psychology as we understand it is the psychology of young 20-something undergraduates in America.
Yeah. So
and that's not a good sample.
No. I read this paper and it was like the average for all studies, not just psych, but like the people tend to be Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic.
Weird.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that weird thing is true. And we're just running to this will cure cancer. This will help people deal with depression. This will help you be sexier. This will take 10 pounds off your butt. Right? According to who?
Mm-hmm.
Right? For whom?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm a Black person. I have high blood pressure and like probably pre-diabetic just because I'm Black and about to be 50. Period. How does this work with my body? How does this work with my chemistry? We don't even have that data, but yet we're putting out all these things for people. I mean, I guess. Good luck with that.
Do you think this is generally understood in Black communities? Like that medicine is not like there's obviously people aren't super trusting of the medical establishment for a lot of good reasons.
Yes.
But like, is that like they understand the sample set is not for them?
I think more Black people have just learned not to trust the medical industry as a whole. Mm-hmm. It's funny, I went to get my COVID shot like when it first came out. I was like first night at the Oakland Coliseum. And this doctor came up to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm glad you're here." And this was like back when it was like, America, like I'm never that patriotic, but like when I see like National Guard and like, volunteer nurses and first aid and like Red Cross out there, I was like, God, yeah, we got together for this. So the guy's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here." And I'm like, "I'm glad you're here." He's like, No. I mean like you. He's like, "I've been out here he's like, I've been out here 7 hours. He's like, "I've been out here 5 hours and I've seen 4 Black people here." And I was like, "I get it." And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, bruh." He's like, "Are we really that bad?" I'm like, "Yeah, bruh, you are." And like I told him stories of just like going to the doctor and having like doctors say like the most racist, like inappropriate shit to me. And like, when you're high on Novocaine or you've just had like you're vulnerable, right? Like I can't snap back at them and be like, fuck your face on your mom. I can just never go back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, all these conversations about access in the psychedelic space, it makes sense. This is why I made the documentary, right? Like the best way to get more Black people doing psychedelics is for them to see Black people doing psychedelics. Now, we're not doing psychedelics in the documentary, but we are talking about them. We're talking about people's experiences. But like the medical model itself is not going to be able to sell psychedelics to Black people. It's just... I mean, it couldn't sell a freaking COVID vaccine to Black people, I was
talking to somebody who runs a big hospital the other day, and they were saying, we're having a really big problem, generally speaking, with trust in medicine.
Yeah. And
their approach was, we're going to get more evidence-based. And I was like, dude, like, do you understand? Like that, like I'm into evidence-based shit for sure, but I find it limiting.
Yeah.
And like we can go a lot further and do better than that. And we should. Yeah. But like medicine, for whatever reason, is stuck in that brand.
Because that's what they can get money for.
I like the term evidence-informed over evidence-based.
Yep.
Yeah, because we can jump laterally. This study could apply here, maybe, and then does everything line up? Cool. Like maybe this will work for that person who's been unfixable for 10 years.
Can't remember his name. Really awesome guy. The dude that was in Kentucky trying to get ibogaine.
Yeah, we talked about him the other day. I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't remember. We had a phone call. It was really, really cool. He's trying to get ibogaine in Kentucky to deal with opioid crisis, and he was saying this big sticking point was Black religious community, because they were like, "The fuck are you talking about?" And this is a white guy. This is like a white, in his own words, like, looks like redneck, like accent, Kentucky accent. Love this dude. This dude is freaking awesome. He's like doing great work. Unfortunately, because of the shifts in power over there, he's probably not gonna be able to get stuff done. But his big stumbling block was like Black community, because they were like, you're going to burn us for decades about substance use. And now you're going to say that the thing to cure the substance use is more substance. Oh, yeah, that's cute. That's funny. And I'm like, I get it. I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think he was the one to deliver the message. I think he knew that.
For sure.
I think he was trying to find people that could deliver that message to Black communities. And on one level, that is, if somebody gave me $1 million, that would be the work that I would be doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would be like, okay, let's do a nationwide tour, state by state, city by city, talking to Black people about like the benefits of some of this plant-based medicine and how it's not outside of our culture. That like if you have root workers in your family, if you have medicine folks, if you have Obadiah folk, if you have like, Sangoma, if you have any of that like Black religious, tradition, like medicine tradition in your family, like, these are the things that they would use to alter their consciousness, but that has to come on a grassroots level. That can't really come from above. And the medical industry is just above.
Right. Yeah, there's so many issues with them, like trying to be good communicators or be good operators. It's tough. It's a really hard scene. I'll give doctors a little credit here. Like the thing they jumped through, it's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Like that whole residency thing, like let's let you not sleep and then treat people in life-threatening situations for years.
Don't get me wrong.
It's fucked.
There's excellent doctors.
Oh, 100%.
They are trapped in an ineffective system.
Yeah, it's really tough.
You know what I mean? Like there's folks who work hard and like figure shit out and sorry, no offense to doctors, but like there's nurses that are absolutely stunning in their treatment of folks with substance use. Those nurses will...
Such different training.
Oh my goodness, right? But they are stuck in systems that don't allow for the fullness of their experience to inform their responses. Half the time they have to break the rules in order to make things work. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not a system that I can really get behind, Yeah, I've got a good friend in the documentary, Akua, Dr. Akua Prieto Brown. What's up, Akua? We've known each other since we were 19.
Oh, wow.
She went to medical school in Cuba.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And, Cuba, for those that don't know.
Like more doctors per capita than anywhere else in the world, is that right?
Yeah, and the Global South sends many, gets many of their doctors from Cuba. So her approach to medicine is entirely different. She's like, if you don't know, if you, it's like therapists. If you haven't established trust with your patient, you have nothing, right? There's why don't we have any med compliance in the West? Because you haven't established trust. You just give me pills. You say, take these pills. And it's like, it hurts when I pee now. Oh, well, here, take these pills. Okay, now my poop is blue. Okay, now take these pills. Okay, now I can't see. Okay, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. You're taking too many pills. At what point have you sat down and been like, hey, man, how are you feeling today? Right? Again, doctors trapped in a system, 10 minutes? 10 minutes roughly. Max to see each client?
I had 15 the other day. It felt like a luxury. Yeah.
But, Cuba, different story. They're like, you have to establish that connection. That's your main job when you walk through the door. And when I see Akua, working with people, it's just a different vibe.
I want to talk about Cuba for days, but I don't know if now is the time. I just remember like trading when they got cut off from like Western oil. They had to start trading doctors for oil with Venezuela, which is like fascinating. And it's just endlessly curious. Like I wonder what would happen once they get their hands on this stuff. Like how would they want to operate? That'd be a fascinating question.
I'm curious to see how South Africa does it. I'm really interested to see what Ireland does with it too, because like there's a huge mushroom tradition in Ireland. Like I don't know, they generally tend to be progressive. Like
Freud said they were like the most hopeless of people in terms of working with it. It's a different psyche, like slightly different psyche than the rest of Europe in an interesting way.
Yeah, because they fight. Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean like they appreciate struggle. Like in a way.
It's such a core part of lineage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the Irish. Like
such a fun opposition to the Brits.
I'm like waiting till my foot heals up, and like I really just want to do like a 10-day walking tour of Ireland, and just like, what's up? Play hi. Yeah, I know I'm random and I shouldn't be here, but I'm here. Hi, how are you? Can we be friends? Went to Dublin when I was in my 20s, and I was like, I'm coming back.
Oh my God. Yeah, we did like an think that was my first like international trip with my family. It was like the southwestern corner. My dad was in an Irish band forever, so it's like a core part of our world.
Nice.
And I was like, oh fuck yeah, we finally get to like touch the myth. And like, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. I might feel more at home in Scotland. I think that's where my blood's from. But
Okay.
whatever. Similar resistance to the Brits.
Definitely.
Maybe a little less genocidal towards Scotland, but whatever. Anyway, yeah, man, like we've injected a little hope here, which is good.
Okay,
Like we got some hope in Denver. We got some hope out here with you guys doing some great work. But like what other kind of stuff do you see as really hopeful in the, I hate to call it a movement, fractionalized movement.
Not.
Yeah.
It's not a movement. I think wherever there are small bands of people led by women over the age of 50, connected to the land, who are focused on healing themselves and others and staying in community, there is hope. Like every single part of that, like I feel like that's where I find hope. If I see a man in charge, I'm like, oh, it's fine. If I don't see any land involved, I'm like, smash. If it's like one individual, I'm like, smash. It's like all of those things. Like that's where I'm like, okay, this is something different, right? I noticed, like, I didn't say like, and they're profitable, right? Or they're like making money, or they've got a new training. No, like. What works in Oakland is not going to work in San Francisco. It's not going to work in Mendocino. It's not going to work in Denver. It's not going to work in Detroit. It's not going to work in freaking New York. Everybody gets to do their own thing to fit their environment. And when we find those pockets that like, this works for this community, the only thing I want to do is be like, hey, there's this community and they're doing this and y'all should be able to talk. Right? And just
coalition building. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. And that decentralized sort of way of thinking about stuff. Because in order to like market something, it has to be standardized. Like in order to capitalize, you have to like standardize. And like plant medicine like can't be standardized.
Right. Right. You have to tailor it, meet people where they're at. And yeah, to your point, like geographical stuff matters.
I mean, I'm not going to try and lead a ceremony in Alaska. I don't know what that's like. I want to see what that ceremony's like.
They got some interesting shit going on.
Yeah, I believe you. I want to see what it's like.
Finally started getting contacted by Alaskans. So
really?
I'll keep you informed.
Please, no, seriously, please do it. Like I have mad respect for anybody that goes up there and stays up there.
Wow, my little sister moved up there for 3 or 4 years. It's wild. Learned a lot.
Yeah, it's frontier land,
Good. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you. That's really interesting. And I just want people like, yes, those books might be a little much for you. Pool up everybody.
Yep.
Just do it together. Make it a team sport.
Yep.
Like if you don't have the resources to go, get whatever training it is, like just do it yourselves together. Be in community about it and just keep learning, right? Like this is you're never done here. How
are you done with life? You know what I mean? Like, I thought I knew everything to know about drugs when I was like 16 years old, like doing freaking Molly in the tunnel in New York. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, I know, this is the shit. And then I'm like, oh shit, wait, go to Morocco. And I'm like, oh shit.
Different jam.
This is what this is, right? Then like come back and see like, okay, use in Oakland. And I'm like, oh shit, this is different. Then go up to Humboldt. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is weed culture, right? Like, we're always, and then I get older, right? And then like, there's like different legal battles and different, social battles. And, I remember talking to this kid from the Midwest, and he came out here and he was hooked on crystal meth, Tina at the time. And I was like, just break it down for me, bud. Like, what happened? He's like, okay. He's like, it's real easy. He's like, I grew up eating cheese and crackers. He's like, I came out to the Bay Area and I was fat and ugly and I lived in the Castro. He's like, and if I wanted to feel pretty and I wanted to stay up all night and dance with the pretty kids, I had to do some Tina. I had to do some crystal. So I was in the club every night doing shitloads of crystal. And guess what? I lost a bunch of weight. And guess what?
Do it. Yeah.
I look pretty. And guess what? I could party all night. So, right. And so his queer identity was linked with his crystal meth use. We didn't even talk about that shit. Right? And so it's like, I'm supposed to say, just say no?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just supposed to say, well, this is going to kill you. I mean, okay, but what about the rest of him, right? Like, this is actually a way of him, like, feeling alive, right? That solution, whatever it is for him, that balance for him, is not going to work for the heterosexual, logger coming out of Des Moines or whatever, who's like doing crystal to stay awake to do long drives, right? So why do they have to? Why does it have to be the same?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have to meet people where they're at. We have to be able to have those conversations. Similar with psychedelics. Some people are doing mushrooms because they want to experience the joy and wonder of the universe. Some are doing them so that they don't kill themselves. We can have different conversations. It doesn't all have to be the same. Say again?
Some to be better at spreadsheets. I fucking hate spreadsheets. I get it. I need to be better at them, but I don't know.
Maybe do some mushrooms. Be better at spreadsheets.
Fuck. Yeah. So spot on. I think we delivered a lot of really good messages here and covered some good territory. And people, we want you to have a little bit more compassion, be real.
Yep.
You don't have to be kind all the time.
Nope.
Yeah. And different populations have different needs.
Yep.
Weird. Go figure.
Not everything has to look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Stop culture vulturing.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to tap into a culture that has plant medicine, look into your own culture because your culture has plant medicine somewhere there.
Mm-hmm.
Molestation is not a part of psychedelic work. You do not have to feel that you are molested or you are out of your body or you are not letting go enough, in order to do this work.
The shame from not letting go. Fuck those people.
Fuck those people. They're such assholes. You have a right to, have whatever defenses you have. And if you want to let those defenses go, then you work with that probably before the medicine a little bit. And then, nothing should be happening that's a surprise for you that's going to, make you feel vulnerable or less okay after your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, take care of yourselves, please, because people out here are crazy.
Yeah, and it takes a lot to vet a facilitator.
Yep.
So I'd at least 3 or 4 independent verifications per facilitator. And it's probably better if it's a peer situation, right?
I say move at the speed of trust.
I like that.
Just if it takes a year, let it take a year. If it takes 2 years, let it take 2 years. Where are you rushing to? It's going to be there. Not going anywhere.
Yeah. On your 6th flight to Peru in the same year to do ayahuasca, maybe question, what could I do closer to home?
Why am I going to, why do I need so much ayahuasca? What is happening?
Right.
I know I've been telling stories this whole time. I'm sorry. But I remember one of those kids I used to work with. We were at some food store or something, some nature food store. And he's like, God damn, what do these white people do that they gotta burn so much fucking sage, man? What demons were attacking them that they need so much fucking sage? My grandma would burn a leaf, maybe 2. These motherfuckers come through with bunches and bunches of sage, just burning down the whole. I was like, dude, relax. But it's real, why is there this notion of more, right? Instead of thinking what's the highest dose you can take to get your thing? What's the lowest dose you can take in order to feel something? Maybe think about that. What sensitivities are you developing?
Yeah. I used to eat an unconscionable amount of MDMA in one night. Now it's far more fucking moderate and far more sparse. A couple times a year or something.
Sounds like growth.
Yeah, I've grown a lot.
No, I'm real talk. Just, so many people I know that are in this space, they're maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. I'm not dosing myself all the time. I don't need one. They're I did the medicine to get some clarity. I have that clarity and I am doing what the medicine told me to do. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to keep going. It's just going to be the same fucking message every time I go back. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing. I don't need that. You know? I'm yeah, I get it.
Well, I'm going to advertise this to everybody in San Francisco that goes to Burning Man.
Oh, God. That's their culture. That's their culture. I mean, it's not my culture. It's their culture. And if that's what they want to do and enjoy themselves, then great. that's just not the only way to do things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and honestly and truly, like, it's not my scene. I'm not in love with it. There's no need for me to shit on them just because it's not my scene, except for the amount of cultural dominance that they spray all over the place. But I like it when they go to Burning Man because then San Francisco is cool again. Sorry, that was such a backhanded.
Let the secret out.
Yeah, I know.
So, like, is it actually cooler, like, during Burning Man? Is there fun events and shit?
I find San Francisco to be more tolerable when that collective is out of the city.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah, you'll just feel it. Mm-hmm. It's like a culture. It's like, oh, remember, like Obi-Wan Kenobi? He's like, there's been a great shift in the Force. There's been a great shift in the Bay. Burning Man is happening far away. The bridge is less crowded.
Yeah, that's a big deal, actually. A bridge, for sure. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I can skip Burning Man. Who knows? Someday, maybe.
Do that. Skip that. You're fine.
All right, man. So thank you so much for this. Like, where can people find you? You got some books. You got some other shit going on. You got some film.
Yeah. If you're interested in Ayize's books, it's AyizeJama-Everett.com. AYIZE Jama, J-A-M-A, Everett, EVERETT.com. If you're interested in my therapeutic spiritual work, it's AyizeJE.com, AYIZEJE.com. I've got a great documentary that's out that's going to be touring in February, A Table of Our Own. You can go to atableofourown.org. We're going to be showing in Denver on the 7th and 8th. We're going to be in Detroit February 24th. And we're going to be in LA on the 28th. And I guess I can let it out here. Sometime in February, around Valentine's Day, we will have the film available online for 3 days. So hope you can.
What?
Yeah. For like 3 days, you can check it out. You got to pay for it. You got to pay for it. But you'll be able to check it out for 3 days. And then on the 15th, we're going to be doing a lecture, online talk, sponsored by CIIS. So folks can log on to that. And you can get all this information at the website, atableofourown.org. Yeah. And then you can read my books, Liminal People, Liminal War, Entropy of Bones, Heroes of an Unknown World, The Last Count of Monte Cristo, and Box of Bones 1 and 2. All things that I have written, comics, graphic novels, all the fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. Ayize, thank you so much. Hope we can do it again in the future.
I hope this was good. I hope it wasn't too rambly.
I'm into it. I loved it. Okay. So thank you. And there you have it, Ayize Jama-Everett. I hope you all enjoyed that one and learned some things and took in some new perspectives, right? Like, we get in a really serious echo chamber here in the psychedelic space, and often we're not coming at this topic as authentically and as fully as we perhaps want to. So I hope that interview helped, and I hope when you go watch this film, it'll help even more. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Psychedelics Today. Go see A Table of Our Own. Check it out if it's streaming, or if you're in Detroit, Los Angeles, or Boston, go check it out. All right. I think that's it for now. Thank you all for tuning in to Psychedelics Today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.